Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is January 12th, 2023. I am James Jones, joined today by the returning John Lindemann.
It's great to be back and start another year with you wonderful gentlemen.
Yep, it is definitely the first episode of 2023. I'm also joined by Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
And Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Good evening.
Pop quiz, gentlemen. What is special or significant about today?
Nothing.
Well, over here it's Friday the 13th, so that's what's special is the slightly higher probability of getting dismembered, I guess.
Oh, okay. John's nihilism right on display at the very beginning, which is great.
2023. It's Scorched Earth is my phrase for 2023. Scorched Earth.
Well, thank you for naming the episode in the first minute. That's beautiful.
I'm still looking for an actual answer. I don't have anything or anything funny, so please.
It's probably the anniversary of something.
You are correct.
No, it's a very narrow.
Surely that list of seasonal horror films that James had, there had to be both a Thursday the 12th and a Saturday the 14th.
I wish there was a Thursday. Somebody has to have made Thursday the 12th as a parody film, right? No, so it is the 6th anniversary of something. I'll give you that. January 12th or 13th, depending on where you were.
It's the Switchmas.
There you go. It is. In fact, it was happening right about now, time-wise. This is the 6th anniversary of Switchmas, the weird stage show out of Japan where I think it was at 4 a.m. in Europe, some absolutely miserable time. And then for us, it was in the late evening, and it started with a weird dance rave DJ. And ended with Goichi Suda blowing out his microphone, screaming about the fact that Tokyo Big Sight's the host of wrestling events, which is not his script. And some poor translator going, "Oh God, he's off script. Fuck, I'm screwed." But yeah, that was our first time getting we got a brief look at Mario Odyssey during the Switch reveal a few months earlier. It was in November. But this was our first time, it having a name and being shown in detail. This was the first time we saw Xenoblade 2. This was another Zelda trailer. This was the one that gave us a date on, though. This was Splatoon 2's reveal. Although was that in the teaser for the first video? It was definitely its official announcement that Splatoon 2 was a thing.
I didn't know we had homework before this podcast. I'm sorry.
I'm doing this from memory.
It's a big week. I remember that was the same week the Bills signed Sean McDermott, which is kind of amazing that there is actually a Bills coach who is still in post as long as the Switch has been a thing.
That's right. Not only
you would not have thought it was that likely at the time.
Oh man. So yeah, it's kind of significant, and since I give the episode the date every time, to give that context, people can kind of understand, where we are, rather than just giving you the episode number, which doesn't give you a whole lot to go off of. The fact that it's episode 805 doesn't really give you anything for history. Now, I'm telling you, we are literally 6 years into the Switch's life at this point. It comes out March 3rd, I think, was the release date. So we are rapidly approaching the 6-year anniversary. Yeah, this was when it became more concrete, because the first trailer was just that. It was like a teaser. This is
the biggest thing that I remember. There was a lot to take in. Obviously, it was a big thing. You felt like they really needed a strong showing,
right,
to get this thing off on the right foot. After, I mean, I guess that sort of just pre-recorded, kind of trailer thing, a teaser video that they'd done months earlier was a decent enough start, but it felt like there was quite a lot riding on it to try and shake off the stench, frankly, of how badly Wii U had gone. But in terms of just from a personal point of view, it's oh God, we'll be playing Zelda in 6 weeks. Fuck.
Right.
We've been so long waiting for it, all the way from the Desperation Direct where Wii U, when they were firing all the torpedoes. And
Here's
just
a piece
saying,
of
we're going to do a Zelda with a different structure, all the way to that moment, and then it's happening like really soon. This is going to be incredible.
And we're getting there now because we're approaching the actual the May release date of Tears of the Kingdom, which it feels like we've been seeing forever, but by Breath of the Wild standards, it's been a brief window. Like we're 2 years in at this point to the first time we saw Tears of the Kingdom content. And that's comparatively quick. But yeah, it was that, and it was also that like, oh god, I have to pre-order a system now. Fuck. Not that I didn't already have a system perfectly capable of playing Breath of the Wild, but
Of course, well, yeah, we all did, yeah.
But
so few others that was true for.
The Fallen, and there wasn't like you could get one because they had taken them off the shelves. But yeah, it was a big deal for them, and you knew it because they flew in press to various cities around the world to do big hands-on, the first hands-on with the system. Because I remember Jeff Gerstmann streamed on his radio feed his like a talkover of the broadcast because he didn't have any video equipment with him, because they had flown him all the way to New York to do the hands-on event, and they had a fake airplane seat set up so they could show like the tabletop mode on an airplane. So I remember there's this picture of him and Dan Reichert sitting in fake airplane seats, and he looks miserable, and Reichert looks predictably just absolutely thrilled with the artifice of it all. So it was also the 1-2 Switch reveal, which everybody walked away from thinking, what the fuck was that? And then they played it, and they didn't have any idea either. And 6 years on, I still don't know what the hell that thing is. So, yeah, that was the significance of today. I just figured it was fun to point out to give that context. But we're going to go ahead and get started with new business. And since John is our returning host, it's John. It's been like we haven't spoken to you since like December 20th, which is almost a month ago.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
I did the old travel up to Canada, hang out with the fam. Got a bad cold. Was sick as a dog for about 3 days, so I got the full Canadian experience, I feel like.
Nice.
Yeah, while I was up there, I did, actually, in preparation for that trip, I did get my hands on the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection for Switch. And it's very nicely done. Of course, it is done by Digital Eclipse, I believe.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
Yep. And so it's a really nice package. I mean, so what this is it's much more impressive than most collections you'll see out there because it has videos included with it, and along with the original games, a certain package of original games, and then also reinterpreted games. So, for example, there is a new version of Breakout on there, and it's all really nicely laid out. They have a whole timeline that you can go through, and it goes right from the start, right from the 70s, where you're talking about the first Pong cabinets, and a lot of, but even like these kind of deeper side stories where somebody found somebody. Kind of almost these mythical stories that are actually real, where somebody sees an ad in the back of a newspaper that says, arcade cabinets for sale, or like Atari arcade cabinets for sale, and they call them up, and they're 5 pristine Pong cabinets from the early 70s in different colors, and it just very kind of crazy stuff like that. And it turns out that it was that these Pong cabinets, they happen to be on the sales route of one of the early Atari founders. I don't know if it was Nolan Bushnell. I don't remember. But yeah, just a lot of crazy stuff like that, but just very well done. And also, of course, they have a lot of flyers, like arcade flyers, and they also talk about stuff like the failed Atari pinball machines. Just a lot of interesting stuff. And of course, Atari is such a seminal company that a lot of this stuff is just, it's very interesting to see where all of this stuff came from. And they also interview a lot of these kind of old crusty developers from that time period, like Eugene Jarvis, for instance, who likes to swear a lot, actually.
I can believe it.
Yeah. So it's a really, really nice package. I haven't gotten as deep into it as I planned. One of the reasons why I got it on Switch is apparently for some of the games you can do Tate mode. So that's kind of like a hidden Easter egg for some of the games that you can do that. And of course you can't do that on other ones. I will probably I could see myself double dipping on this. I mean, I double dip a lot these days, especially now that I have Steam Deck. I double dip to an insane degree. But yeah, it's extremely good. And actually, so I may actually come back to that later on, maybe in a future episode. I think I'll probably dig deeper into it and just see kind of like what the games are. I mean, I played like a smattering of the kind of reimagined games that they have on there. And they're pretty good. They're pretty good. I haven't dug deep into it though. But, the other thing that I don't believe I've talked about is, emulation on Steam Deck. Have I talked about that?
You haven't. I did want to say one thing about Atari before you jump though.
Yeah.
So, that there are, as I say, there's 100 playable classics on there. I did not even realize Atari did pinball until you mentioned it. So I pulled up what they released. I've actually played one of these things. I played Superman. I didn't realize Atari made it. The vast majority of their games never made it past prototype and got killed. Yeah. Boy, they were bad. They were real bad at this.
They were really bad. Yeah, they were extremely bad at pinball, and they eventually just scuttled their entire pinball operation because I think the machines that they were creating were really innovative, but I guess they had really, really bad, they were poorly designed from the standpoint of just staying operational.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the whole name of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think Eugene Jarvis actually says this, that the machines when they were up and running they were actually really good pinball machines, and they made a lot of money when they were up and running. But the problem is they would die within. I mean, they would be on site for 3 or 4 days, and then they would die because just the way some of the stuff would burn out, and they just had some really, really bad design choices.
Yeah, I'm reading about somebody who owns a Middle Earth pinball machine, which is definitely not licensed. And basically the blog is like, here's the 97 things I fixed on it, and it just goes. The other thing I wanted to point out though is there's a quote on the Atari 50th anniversary. They call it Atari 50 : the anniversary celebration.
Yeah.
From a website who gave it a 9.5 out of 10, quote, an interactive timeline and virtual exhibit, Atari 50 is unparalleled. From Nintendo World Report.
I would agree with that.
I was going to guess Nintendo Life.
We are the pull quote. And for once, unlike a previous pull quote, it's something we actually said in the review. I just checked. Which has happened not that long ago. So, yeah, there you go. And then for whatever reason, they've got Cybernator as one of the images to show. So they really are willing to just put it all out there. Because there's nothing good about Cybernator at all.
No.
Absolute shit garbage. So
are we sure we're talking about the right game? Cybernator. Isn't that like a Super NES Konami game?
Yeah, it's like that's Assault Suits.
No, it's
the localized Assault Suits game.
It's
a Super Famicom.
Cyber something. I know the one you're talking about. I just needed to make sure to.
Yeah, it's not Cybernator.
Rub your nose in it.
Gee, thanks. Cybermorph.
Cybermorph. I don't remember that one.
Yeah, how dare I not be able to remember that greatly memorable video game title.
Like we might confuse some people. And Cybermorph, like people should look up a video of that and see just.
Not for long because it talks a lot.
Yeah.
We played it at PAX
Trevor
East.
McFur. Like you look at a video of Trevor McFur, and it's like
Trevor McFur sounds like it's made up.
I know
it's not though. It's completely not. I'm like I'd forgotten about it. Thankfully, my brain had in a classic trauma reaction. I'd forgotten about Trevor McFur
with the furries, right?
It's something. Well, it's something like Trevor McFur in the Something Galaxy, right?
It's the Crescent Galaxy.
There you go.
Like I'm
I
aware.
thought it would be at least something like Star Fox. Like I thought that's what they were going for. But no, like people should go look up, if they've never seen it, a video of the gameplay and be dazzled by the 64-bit gameplay. It's amazing.
Yeah, like Trevor McFur is if Andrew Lloyd Webber was making cats and went full, no, I want to fuck the cat, as opposed to like 80% of the way that he went. It's deeply unsettling to look. Like the actual characters are like, oh, it's a lion's head on a dude's body, but also he's jacked. Yeah, it's really up there. It's fucking something else. And then, but yeah, that's your point. The gameplay is not that. The gameplay is very bad. We played a couple of these games at PAX East, if you'll recall, John. Mm-hmm. There is video of me playing Cybermorph and just basically collapsing into the table because of how terrible it was. Mm-hmm. That also may have been at like midnight, so whatever. Yeah, so cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more of your experiences with this. As you said, we have not talked about you emulating though on the Steam Deck. Are we about to talk about deviant criminal behavior?
Yeah. I mean, look, I do not endorse.
I do not endorse this thing I'm about to endorse.
No, I mean, I do not endorse this. I mean, I would advise the children at home to stray from a life of crime.
John, I think you're being a bit sort of hasty here, because I'm sure you did delete it after 24 hours.
Of course, Greg.
So
right.
I mean,
these are backups of games you own, correct?
Absolutely.
You don't have to hand yourself into the authorities quite yet, as long as you've done that, which I'm sure you have.
It's all archival. But only for 24 hours. It was a 24-hour archive. I enjoyed the experience.
There'd be no need for a special counsel and anything like that.
Mm-mm. A 24-hour archive sounds like a 70s band name. But like they only make like disco educational music. It's just absolute terrible garbage. Mm-hmm. God, now I've already got 2 titles. Thank you, John.
Yay. That's what I'm here for.
That's the experience. As long as you own a copy already, I'm sure we're fine. So there's no criminal behavior here. Mm-hmm. And this is definitely not the worst thing that's going to get talked about in today's episode. So we'll just let John go. John, what do you got?
Well, yeah. So the Steam Deck, it's actually remarkably impressive in terms of emulation. Just because you download a package called EmuDeck, and what that is effectively a script that installs a whole bunch of other emulators. I mean, and we're talking, there's it installs like 15 emulators or even more. Not all of them. The only ones that were actually disabled, there was an Xbox 360 one that was disabled, and I think maybe a PlayStation 2 one that was disabled. I'm not too sure why. There's probably some reason. But mainly, what I'm focused on is like the Super Nintendo and like those kind of retro, like all the Nintendo stuff and Sega stuff.
Yeah, you got to play the Peacekeepers somehow, haven't you, John? I know you've zeroed in on that one. That's a particular choice. Unavailable otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Exactly. So
I don't. So, John, go play the Peacekeepers. Go, like, just.
I gotta say, like, I don't have a bad feeling associated with Jalico from playing those games back in the day. Like, they were perfectly serviceable.
No, they're not!
I
don't know. Back in the day, like, they didn't stand out as like the worst of the worst. Like,
the word you're looking for is cromulent. I find they're perfectly cromulent.
There's nothing cromulent about the Peacekeepers. What is the antithesis of cromulent?
It's a good, the antonym. That's a good question.
Yeah, Rival Turf was, I don't know, like, it was enjoyable. I just remember
but that's the best one.
Yeah.
All the others are worse. They're cromuless.
From Cromulon. The Cromulons.
Oh, this episode's already gotten started.
That sounds like one of the factions in a Transformers knockoff. That's like I think the GoBots.
The Cromulons are from Rick and Morty, if I recall correctly.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
Rick and Morty. They're the ones that run the intergalactic, effectively the intergalactic game show where you perform a song for them, and if they don't like it, they blow up your planet. Those are the cromulons.
See, that's what Eurovision's been missing.
Yeah, so it's
you got to raise the stakes, haven't you? That's the thing.
That's right. It's like they're not voting for the best; they're voting for the worst song.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Norway, you've had it too easy for too long. I'm just saying.
So yeah, video games.
Video games.
So the Steam Deck. Yeah, so you install Emu Deck, and I think what's so impressive about it is really the I guess the professional quality of the installer. You go through it. It's a wizard, and it asks you, of course, what emulators you want to install, but it also goes step by step and kind of asks you all of these kind of different things, like what do you want as the background, all these like little things where so you can kind of tailor it as you want, and you can of course just kind of do the quick install, but you can also kind of go through and choose exactly what you want to, like how you want things to look and all of that. But the coolest thing is, and really what impressed me is, you can play retro games in all kinds of different ways, but there's two really cool things that they did with this, like sort of integration points where they have, where there's a couple of websites. There's a French website that has pretty much a huge archive of all of these kind of like box art, like these little packages of box art and videos that show up in there's the biggest emulator on it is that I've been using is Emulation Station. And so it deals with, Sega consoles, Nintendo consoles, Game Boy, that kind of stuff. So that's where I've really been looking at it. And it's super slick. So you can scrape all of this information for all of these ROMs that you have. And it presents them in a really slick professional way where it shows you both and it's cross-region as well. And all of this stuff is all community made. So it has like a little kind of top level, so you have like your list of games on the left, and then on the right, as you select through the games, it has like this little, little package that runs. I'm not too exactly sure how to describe it. The word is escaping me, but it shows the box, and it has a video in the background, and it shows like the name of the game, and then it kind of cycles through this little kind of audio-visual package. It shows screenshots of the game. It shows more video of the game. So it's really, really slick looking. And you can do that for games from Europe, Japan, all that stuff. So you can actually pick and choose. You can scan through. If you have some Japanese ROMs, you can go through and individually pull in the Japanese version of this little kind of this little media package. It's really, really slick. And then the other thing that they did was they partnered with a site, I believe it's retrogameachievements.org. I'm pulling that from the back of my head, but I believe that's it. But that is a kind of a crowdsourced retro game achievements site. So not all games have it, but these are community-made achievements. So, like, for example, just to kind of kick the tires on this stuff, I tried Super Mario Brothers, and you're playing Super Mario Brothers, and as you do things, you are firing off achievements, and it says, like when you load up the game, it says you are logged into Retro Game Achievements, and then as you complete things, like you complete, your first level, you complete it with 6 on the timer, so you get 6 fireworks. You'll see in the top left, you say this achievement gets fired, and it has the name of the achievement and a little picture with it. And so it's crazy that you're sitting there firing off. They've effectively added community achievements for all of these retro games, which is incredibly cool. And then you you can track your achievement progress on retro game achievements. And so that's incredibly impressive. I've been trying to think how they do it, because obviously they have to trigger on events in the game. I mean,
so I've seen something on this, and what I'm pulling it from memory a little bit.
Yeah. And it's retroachievements.org, by the way. That's what it is.
Yeah. My understanding is that they're monitoring memory.
Yeah.
So that like they're looking at the emulator's memory, and they know they've identified flags that indicate certain achievements, and so they're tying to that.
Mm-hmm.
And since a lot of these, especially the NES games, all of your progress is stored in memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so hard to do it, but you couldn't create like a compound achievement that's like only clear 5 stages without jumping or something like that, because they wouldn't be tracking the variable of how many times you jump, because the game obviously has no reason to do that. So, like some of the more complex achievements that a more modern game might have, they might be tracking variables specifically for the purpose of triggering that achievement. Mm-hmm. In this case, they can just look at the memory and make assessments from that.
Yep. Yeah.
See,
It's really ingenious.
In all seriousness, this would provide a legitimate basis to play the Peacekeepers on your Steam Deck instead of NSO. Because it could have achievements like switch the music on in the menu.
We got a letter about that.
Yeah,
right?
Voodoo said not to read this, but it sounds like something out of a spoof.
Yeah, like he said. So I get sent a correction about the fact that the Peacekeepers in North American does have music, but it's off by default.
You have to enable it in the settings. I love that. Sounds like something out of a new satire show. The kind of just nonsense thing. I love it. I just love even more the idea of switching the music on and then getting an achievement unlocked.
Oh my god! Like what that tells me is 3 things. 1, it's even stupider than my assessment. Like it was perfectly logical for me to assume there was no music, because why would the default state being off is weirder than there just not being music in the North American release. Like that's even crazier. But the part that really tells me the whole story here is that was added to be off by default because somebody who was working on localizing that game got fucking sick of that music. Like that's the only explanation.
At some point, it was meant to go back, put the default back to it being on, but they never did. Or perhaps stupid. It was just purely, a kind of FU.
I mean, the music's not great, but good God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the other site was screenscraper.fr, by the way. So those are the 2 kind of integration points. But I mean, it's really impressive and well beyond anything I've seen. Just in terms of the execution of it is just incredibly slick, and it works really seamlessly on the Steam Deck. So
there's a really big similar kind of stuff going on with Mister development, where they're RetroArch. Which is a front end for a bunch of emulators. There's all these emulators that are being developed, open sourced for various systems for Mister. There's open source developed like physical components to add on to your Mister to make, like, you want to do Dreamcast games, well, you're going to need to get this special memory unit. And yeah, there's like big expansive front ends to go with that too, that have like retro achievements and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised to see that that's moved to Steam Deck, because that feels like even more of a natural home than a Mister. And look, Mister is not exactly the most user-friendly thing, because you literally have to buy it in pieces and assemble it, or pay someone to do it for you.
What is Mister? I have not heard of that.
So Mister is an FPGA. So kind of like Raspberry Pi, but it's a bit more got a bit more juice.
Okay.
And so you can buy one, but if you buy a bunch of add-on components, it's got slots you can plug components in, so like memory or USB or whatever. You can add components into it to get it to a point where it's able to play lots of different games. And there's essentially GitHub repos of different systems emulators that you can download and try. And they're in various states of functionality, and some have special hardware requirements, like you need to have this much memory in it, so you have to go buy a memory unit. It's a weird like side hobby that I guess started getting popularized around 2019. But it's the same idea, but this is obviously a much more approachable product and obviously much more mass market.
Yeah, and I think that's really what kind of blew me away was the fact that it was so, because I like, I mean, yeah, I've heard, I was sort of like, okay, yeah, you can emulate stuff on Steam Deck, great. You can emulate all kinds of things on all kinds of things, right? But when I finally took the plunge, I mean, I had the whole thing up and running in probably 2 hours. And I mean, this is like, I mean, it's just it was so easy to set up. It was so, because I'm used to things being I'm used to emulators being very janky, just kind of goofy. You have to mess around with controls and stuff like that. Just to, I'm just used to having a very janky experience, and that's fine. I mean, it kind of goes with the territory. But this was just like, I mean, incredibly easy. I mean, anybody could set it up, and it just it sets everything up for you, quite literally.
That might have been why those PS2 ones got disabled, because lawyers.
Yeah, I think there was actually a Steam Deck update from what I heard that disabled some of the emulators, particularly Emulation Station. But I think they backed that out, or they changed it, they updated it. I think they probably inadvertently disabled them. And a lot of people complained about it, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. But
or whatever barrier they put up to get around an attorney thing, somebody else worked around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like the old one with emulators was the BIOS stuff, because that would be like you had to have the BIOS stuff, and that's all copywritten.
Yep.
So people would, or patented, I guess.
Yeah,
and so people would not distribute the BIOS.
Yeah, I mean, really, like that kind of stuff. I think that's for the newer consoles, and I don't really care about the newer consoles, frankly. Like, that's not really my concern. It's more the older stuff that I'm interested in.
Yeah, cool.
So, but yeah, it's incredibly slick. I mean, the Steam Deck it continues to be a great investment. I have to say, I have not regretted one penny that I've spent on that thing. Not to mention the Steam sales, where I just went hog wild.
Oh boy.
Nothing, but the thing is, though, with the Steam Deck, I tend to not buy, like I did pick up Death Stranding. I mean, that was on sale, relatively cheap. And I had to laugh at myself because I had just gotten it free from the Epic Game Store, but I'm not going to play it on the Epic Game Store from their launcher, so what do I care? But there's just all kinds of other stuff like Streets of Rage 4. There's certain things that the Steam Deck really, really lends itself to. I buy a lot of the indie stuff and a lot of the stuff like I picked up The Messenger, just kind of stuff like that. Kind of like that indie almost like 16-bit sort of stuff.
The faux retro.
Yeah. Steam Deck is really, really good for that. Like I'm not going to go to Steam Deck and play like Witcher 3, even though I did pick it up.
God damn it.
But we'll see. It was $10. It was $10. Come on.
But the stuff like the Messenger plays really well on the Switch. So
it does.
What is the advantage other than I don't know,
1080, I guess?
Yeah.
On that screen?
Is that screen 1080, John?
I think that's a good question. That is a good question.
Thank you.
Would it matter if it was?
I appreciate your appreciation of my question.
I've decided to position myself as the Steam Deck doubter on this podcast.
So I think the thing was
it's 1280 by 800 is the Steam Deck screen.
Okay. Yes, I mean I think the for those games there probably isn't a huge advantage. And
but I mean, for some games, for Monster Hunter Rise, for example, that's in 60 frames.
Sure.
On Steam Deck.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to me, that's more the reason why you would get a Steam Deck, because I know that there have been deep discounts on Steam, and there continues to be, but maybe not as much as before. But like the difference is not so big between a Steam sale and a Switch, an eShop sale, I find. So like if the game runs
the games
well,
are way cheaper.
They are still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really, really, like you can get. Well, the thing is that you are only going to get those Switch games through Nintendo's storefront. Whereas with Steam, you can get Steam keys dirt cheap on reseller sites.
You can.
Yeah. And you can actually get that's actually not totally true. You can get Switch codes elsewhere, but they're not. You never really see them discounted as deeply as Steam keys.
So you do sometimes, but it's not quite as frequent. No.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's move on to disappointment. Guillaume, you are playing a game that has been a financial disappointment for Ubisoft, and I want you to apologize to their investors, please, especially Mr. Guillemot.
Actually, I was going to start with a little bit more pinball because, as you know, like everyone
fuck my
talking
transitions.
About,
then,
yeah, exactly. Fuck them. Fuck you for trying them. Also,
I like this Scorched Earth. I'm telling you, it's 2023 Scorched Earth.
But I'm sorry. People, like pinball is knowing his resurgence. Everyone's talking about pinball. Lots of feedback on my pinball segments in the past few weeks.
We don't get any feedback ever. Nobody gives feedback on the show.
I'm bullshitting.
You fuckers give feedback on the show, please.
No one cares about pinball. I just want to say that if you're listening to this on Sunday when we're releasing this, you have 1 or 2 days, 1 day probably on Sunday. Like there's a sale on certain packs of tables, at least in North America. So there's a sale on the Zen Classics and the Zen Medieval pack. Those are not great. Like the Zen Classics includes the Tesla table, which I simply do not understand. It's not about the car; it's about the physicist.
But not really either, right? It's about
not really. It's about the idea of it's electricity theme kind of, and orbs. There's lots of orbs. It's a pinball game, so it all lends itself well to this stuff. But also, 2 Williams packs are there, Volume 4 and 5. So if Whitewater, Red and Ted's Roadshow, and Hurricane means a lot to you, then you can get them for less. Hurricane, I think, is a good table. It's got this weird magnet under the table at some point that just messes up with your ball, like a hurricane. I'm sure it was super impressive in real life.
If it worked.
And it did, yeah, well, yeah, if it was not broken. The Volume 5 has Tales of the Arabian Nights, Circus Voltaire, and No Good Gophers, which I think might be a classic. I don't know, it's a name that rings a bell to me, so I'm going to say it's a classic. You must play it. I haven't yet.
It sounds like a DreamWorks movie.
Hmm.
Actually, no, it sounds like an Amblin Entertainment movie from like the 90s. No Good Gophers, the sequel to All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah, it's more likely a Universal joint because there seems to be a lot of Universal stuff in Pinball FX. So the last pack that's on sale is the Jurassic World Pinball pack. And so you've got Jurassic Park Pinball with classic scenes from the original blockbuster film that has all your favorite lines from the movie from actors who are not from the movie, and also some lines that are not from the movie from the same actors that you know and love from not the movie. You've got Jurassic Park Pinball Mayhem, which is just, I guess, a remix, another table based on
Jurassic
classic
Park was
quote-unquote.
big.
Yeah, and Jurassic World Pinball, which allows you to train raptors. I haven't even tried that one. But Jurassic Park, actually, maybe like a little bit too complicated for its own good. It's a weird table. Initially, I was really not impressed. Don't even try to play it without reading the instructions first.
Oh, I thought you were just going to say don't even try to play it.
No, well, it's weird because I tried to play it without reading the instructions first and I didn't get anywhere. And I was like, this is the most boring table. It's just lanes. There's nothing. And how do I get anything to happen on this table? Then I read the instructions. I was like, why do I feel like I need like a PhD in pinball and Jurassic Park to do anything in this? So it's a little bit too complicated for its own good. But once you do get something going, like once you send the ball like 5 times through this one lane and then like you hit the bumper over there, then like you get something to happen, like the raptors show up and try to eat the ball, stuff like that. That's kind of cute. There's like a scene like this. Remember the scene in the kitchen from the movie? So at some point, I don't remember how you start that, but once you do, there's like a freaking, how do you call that? Like a rod that on the ceiling where you hang the utensils from, like the pans and pots and stuff like that. Anyway, like so you've got like pots and pans hanging from a rod, and there are raptors on the table, and so you got to avoid sending your ball on the raptors. You got to try to hit the pans and pots to make noise to divert them.
Oh God!
Hopefully to save the two kids. I suppose. I don't know.
He's just gonna try to climb an electric fence. I mean, fuck it.
No, the fence is there. The
Great.
fence is there. You at some point, like if you send your ball like a few times in that one lane, it's going to get stuck on the fence, and then you got to hit it from the other side with like a different ball. Yeah, like if you manage to do that, I didn't, but from the instructions, once you do that, the ball is electrified, and all sorts of weird random things happen.
That's what I want my game to have: weird random outcomes.
Well, yeah, like again, like that's the whole point of the magnets and the hurricane, table. Like it's a thing, right? Like yes, like it's random and unpredictable, but also that's how you get the big points. So risk and reward. Anyway, like it's a fun table, but I would say read the instructions. Otherwise, you're gonna think like this is crap. And yeah, like these are pretty deep discounts, so 50 or 60% off, so worth it. I can only see a bright future for Pinball FX3, which they've already said they were done with. So buy those tables. I don't know who I'm talking to right now. Hopefully someone is listening somewhere.
Somebody somewhere is pulling out their credit card.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And going on a pinball adventure.
Yeah. Well, I really thought my pinball adventures would be over after like the one weekend, but I'm I don't know. I've been lost to pinball.
So now you're just a pinball dealer. Your first hit's free.
Mm-hmm.
A pinball
also,
pusher. Like, there it is. See, got there.
Also, like I've got a pretty big list of friends on Switch just because due to being on this podcast. But I've only got like two people. I'm only competing against two people on the Jurassic Park tables, and of course Zach is one of them. So I need more people to buy those tables. And yeah, so to get back, hey, why don't you transition me to talk about Mario plus Rabbids
I won't.
Sparks of Hope?
You told me to fuck my transitions, so
yeah,
no.
Actually, fuck, and also James, fuck yourself as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is.
Don't let that go. I mean, I don't want that to go understated.
Trust me, it won't. It's gonna live deep in my heart forever.
Okay, well, through the magic.
Transition yourself, Guillaume.
Yeah, well, I will through the magic of editing.
All right. Well, let's move on to disappointment. Guillaume, you are playing a game that has been a financial disappointment for Ubisoft, and I want you to apologize to their investors, please, especially Mr. Guillemot.
Oh, why? Yes, James. Good point.
He's fucked with the timeline. Don't believe him.
Yes, Guillemot has expressed his disappointment at his I guess like the price of shares
to him and me.
So not content with using my taxes to pay his employees and therefore deliver more value to Ubisoft shareholders
to himself because he is the biggest Ubisoft shareholder.
Yep. Yeah, so apparently Sparks of Hope not selling as well as Ubisoft expected. And
I don't know why they're surprised though, because
well, it's as I said last week, like the people's nephews didn't care for the game.
Well, but beyond that though, like they were comparing it to the first game, which was a surprise, kind of a surprise hit, but right. One, it was a novelty. Like it was.
Yeah. Like, it's kind of like, you could have looked at Beautiful Joe 2 and seen this coming.
Right.
Like, there are certain, I don't know, like, there are certain games that are not, certainly not annualizable, and perhaps not sequelizable.
But the other, I mean, it could have still done reasonably well, but here's the other thing to keep in mind. The Switch now isn't where the Switch was in, what was that, 2018?
Right.
Like, there's so many goddamn games on the Switch. Like, there just is more competition.
Yeah. So anyway, that's unfortunate, I guess. But at the same time, it's not like Ubisoft did any meaningful work to fix its culture in their offices. So it's like, fuck them. I don't know.
I don't know if I'll go that far because I feel bad for people who worked on it. But like,
yeah, sure. But it's not like our purchases, or I don't know. They might get bonuses.
They probably do get bonuses depending on performance.
All right, fine. So I'll just write something with my taxes. Tell them like, could you provide a little bit more for the poor Ubisoft employees?
Can you please tax me a little bit more? Poor Ubisoft.
Yes. So yes. Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I played more of it. It's very similar to the first game in that like it's even though like the first game was surprisingly good, but once we found out that it was well made and that it was good and that it was fun, it wasn't a surprise anymore.
Right.
It's almost as if I'm still surprised that the second one is good. Like it is a good sequel. You know, like it does offer enough differences in the terms of like how you move around on the map and stuff like that to still, to add a twist to it, to not just be a carbon copy of the first game with a few bells and whistles added. And I mentioned the added customizability last week. And the fact that you kind of just start off with all the characters, or most of them anyway. And so that gives you more choice for how to approach missions. I kind of have to simultaneously backtrack on that and also correct, I guess, a few things. You're not super incentivized to play with different characters, and that's kind of a shame, because I found that like if I stick with my team of Rabbid Peach, the healer, and Luigi, the not sharpshooter, but the sniper, and some third person. Actually, that one is interchangeable. But like Luigi and Rabbid Peach, a pretty good combo for most missions. Like I can deal with most of the stuff that they send my way. The trouble with talking about Mario plus Rabbids is that it is a tactics game for everyone. So broad appeal. And so it is easier than your average, I think, tactics game, because tactics games with broad appeal are not really a thing, Right. Like, I feel like they're always going to have, like, some complicated stuff to them that will kind of push away most of the audience, most of the, the people that would buy a Mario game, for instance. So this game tries to have that broad appeal, so it is necessarily a little bit easier, and a little bit more forgiving. And I like that at the same time as I'm like, I wish it did offer a little bit more pushback. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm contradicting myself because I am. Like, the thing is, I'm not a big tactics game fan. And I usually fall off games like Fire Emblem way before I finish them. So this is, I think, the tactics game for me. I think that it smooths out a lot of the things that I have a problem with usually with that type of game, that genre. I'm going to stop saying tactics from this point on because I have trouble with it.
Is that a tactical decision by you?
Sure. So just to give you a few quick examples, all the characters level up at the same rate. You finish a mission, they all get the experience points, and they get all of it. So you never have a character that falls behind. And so, like, if you do decide at some point, like, well, Luigi maybe is not the most appropriate character to have in this situation. I don't need a sniper. I'm going to switch him out. Well, you can do that without being penalized because you haven't been using this other character. You're never going to have, like, everyone's at level 10, except like your one level 2 character, which you really should have been leveling up. So that's good. You can easily restart a level, a battle at any point. That's pretty good. Like, it doesn't have the rewind feature that some tactics games have. God damn, I fell into it again. But yeah, like just the fact that the battles usually are pretty short, so starting over from the beginning is good enough, and it does alleviate a lot of the frustration that you might have from I don't know, having to load up an old save or something. So yeah, so like if immediately the game doesn't go your way and you realize like, oh shit, I made a huge mistake, let me start over. Like, it's good to have that option. Yeah, I would guess like these are the two biggest things. Also, like you do have kind of skill points that you can allocate to in a skill tree, just like in the first game. But you can redo that at any time. Like, you're not penalized again for changing your mind and putting your points in something else. Instead of movement, putting in damage and then like changing your mind later. So like it's very user friendly that way. It's very forgiving. And yeah, the fact is that it's still a fun game, and it does, even though like it is like it has broad appeal and it's not too challenging most of the time. Like it will kick your ass if you're not careful, which I think is the important thing, like if you just like run into battle and you don't think like, oh yeah, like, so he's got like these sniper characters, like the computer has these sniper characters on the kind of in Overwatch mode, like where they're gonna, when it's your turn, if you move into their line of fire, they're gonna fire at you. So if you have those characters in a battle, and also like some of the guys who will throw fire at you, and when they throw fire at you and they hit, there's a status effect where you've got like basically like your ass on fire because this is a cartoon, and so like you just like start running around uncontrollably, and so you end up not going, like your character is not gonna stay where you left him, on the map. And like if during that sequence where like they're running with their pants on fire thing, if they end up running into the field of view of those snipers who were waiting for a shot, well, they're going to get it. So like things can just, there can be like a domino effect pretty quickly. Like you can end up with like one moment you have full health and then it's the enemy's turn and all of a sudden your character's dead. So yeah, so it does have like the essentials, I think, of like a tactics game where you just like, you have to think about what you're going to do before you do it. You have to consider all the elements on the field before you commit to your move. You got to make sure to use whatever you have available to mitigate damages, or because sometimes you won't even have a chance to heal your character. Like they're just going to be dead if you play poorly. So yeah, so like it's got I feel that it's satisfying. I can't speak to big like Fire Emblem fans or something like that, like if they will enjoy this or not. Certainly like don't get this game if you can't stand the Rabbids. But I find like the humor hits more than it misses for me. And yeah, like I guess that's basically it. Like I've been enjoying it. The game, of course, like I'm in the second world, and as you go through the game, like more and more skills open up, more and more you get more slots to equip more moves and more skills. Eventually, like you get more types of attacks, and so it keeps the game, I guess, feeling fresh. Because also like the enemies are going to get more and more powerful. So you're going to have to make use of more and more techniques to try to whittle down their health and try to get through a battle. And of course, like there's still, I think that it was this way also in the first game. Like there's different types of objectives. There might be certain things that you have to destroy in the level. There might be like just like a kill every enemy or kill this number of enemies. And usually in those maps, like they keep spawning when you just have a certain number to defeat. And there's also like some missions where you just get to this spot on the map, and those can be quite challenging until you realize that I've mentioned that your characters can get killed. They don't get killed; they get just knocked out. Of course, this is still a Mario game. They just get stars spinning around their heads, but like basically. So you're never going to lose a character.
Concussions aren't a funny thing, Guillaume. Serious.
Well, they are funny if they're little birds going around your head or something. But anyway, so basically, as long as you have one character standing, you still have a shot. And so there have been battles where I managed to get my Rabbid Peach to the end zone, despite like losing everything before. Everyone else, my other two characters. So, it can be kind of, exciting and difficult. And I'm playing on the hardest difficulty. I would recommend that for most people, I suppose. But yeah, like, I'm enjoying it a lot. And it's basically like the tactics game for someone like me who's more or less like, I like the idea of them and then I play them. And sometimes I just don't feel like having tea time with my anime waifus. And so I find that this is a good alternative.
They don't have to be waifus. They could be husbandos too, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Respect.
Of course.
Yes. And do just write. You can just write a check directly to Guillemot. I think that would make turn his smile upside down or his frown upside down.
Okay, but can I get a tax write-off if I do that?
No, they're actually going to increase your taxes more. He's going to put that into lobbying.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the plan. It's look, you got to spend money to make money, especially when it's somebody else's money you're spending and making.
Iron sharpens steel, right? As they say.
No one says that because it doesn't. In fact, iron probably dulls steel. To be honest.
Agree to disagree, but please continue.
You can't just agree to disagree on basic facts of physics. Can you go on vacation again?
Scorched Earth, man. Tell me.
I don't like these new running gags. I don't. Whatever model John we're on, we need to downgrade quickly.
But you want to go back to head gold? Do you want to pull that one out of the? Dust that one off.
Head gold now feels like it's some kind of weird thing about what they put in when you get the shot. They fill your brain with head gold, so you think the way they want you to think.
Yeah, but then you got gold. That sounds great.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's how they get you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm gonna go next, and I'm sitting here now going like, do I really want to do this? Do I want to put to just? I mean, if you're a friend of mine on Switch, which a lot of people listening to the show are, because same reason Guillaume just noted earlier, that because I'm on this show, I've gotten a lot of people who have added me as a friend. You've already seen what I'm up to. And so I've spent a good portion of this week playing one of the titles I picked up during the Switch sale. And this is the game Needy Streamer Overload, which I don't even know where to start here. So I'm going to do what I can, and we'll just figure it out together.
So you would say like it achieved its goal? Like, I mean, if overloading was the point of the game, then... And you don't know where to start. It's like mission accomplished.
Yeah, so yes, effectively. What this game is, it's a little bit like an old princess game, like an old Princess Maker game, where these would be like old games from like the PC 88, where your job was to help raise this princess so that she could be queen. So you'd be in charge of her education and stuff. But this is a very fucked up iteration of that. This is, you are the producer / significant other for a young woman who wants to get into streaming on the internet, like Twitch streaming or whatever the streaming platform of choice is for your region. They seem to be YouTube modeled pretty heavily with super chats and stuff. So, and the interface is kind of YouTube Live-ish. So we'll go with that. But there are 3 things in play here. One, like I said, you're her significant other. So there's already kind of a weird, like, being the producers that this is clearly her idea and you're just sort of along for the ride. 2, she is suffering from some mental darkness. And this game treats that with... It's weird. It's walking an interesting line here because it does kind of make light of it, but also it could be doing it in a way where if it was just like super serious about it, it wouldn't be approachable and you couldn't internalize what it's doing. So while it might be not super serious and it might come off as, if it's, to use a phrase we've been talking about for a few episodes now, taking the piss, like I could very easily see that it does that in order to make the content of sort of the internalized, having something eating at you that you may not have a reason to or understanding, something I've dealt with in the past. Like you might be able to internalize. I was going to say,
better. Like I feel like there's I need more detail because
sure.
Like when you said like has some internal dark stuff, I was like, well, who among us,
Yeah, well, like there's talk. She's talked of like not wanting to live anymore, stuff like that, like serious depression stuff. There is implications that she has some dependency on substances to get through the day. She doesn't like to interact with people, which I understand the irony of her wanting to be a streamer. And really the fundamental motivating factor of her wanting to be a streamer is to get popular so that she can feel validated. And she admits this openly. And so a lot of what you're doing is sort of laying out what she's going to do for the day. And so you're managing her stress, which is really an exhaustion. You're managing her emotional state. Like there is literally a bar indicator. I believe the phrase it uses is darkness. And your job is to, let me get the exact wording because I want to make sure I get it correct because I feel like it's important for what the game is trying to accomplish. Yeah, they use the phrase mental darkness, her stress, and her affection. And that last meter is her affection for you. So the things you do with her, or have her do, like sometimes I just tell her, just go to sleep. Just go sleeping. Affect those either negatively or positively. So if she is really exhausted and I tell her, just go rest. Like, that might take her mental darkness down a little bit. And, of course, it's going to take her exhaustion down or stress down a bit more. But it's not going to drop it to 0 because this isn't, and I think we've all dealt with this. I've got probably more experience than a lot of people. There's exhaustion that's like, I'm tired, I need to get some sleep. But then there's kind of like an emotional exhaustion that doesn't go away when you sleep. And the game's quite clearly talking about the second for her. And then at night, she can stream. And so you pick a topic based on things you've done outside the streaming. So like you went to a park and so she might do a stream about like what she saw at the park. And the thing is she's doing it in character as this character that she's created called Kawaii Angel, or she refers to herself the angel of the internet. She puts on a big fake wig, she puts on all this makeup, she puts on fake contact lenses and essentially assumes this upbeat, cheery persona that's absolutely not the girl you're dealing with. Like the actual woman is dark, moody, brooding. She's kind of mad at the world. And as the game sort of hints in the title, she's also prone to obsession. So when like the affection meter you don't want it to get to full. Because that actually means that she's like, you've pushed her over the limit. So one of the things you can do, like you can hang out with her, and that's literally just the two of you hang out. And she talks to you. All her communication is done through text messages. So you can kind of respond to them with like little line stickers, if you know what line is. And she'll actually respond to the type of sticker you send. So like I once sent her the I'm dead sticker, which is just this cat laying on the ground. And her response was, don't care, bye. Or sometimes she'd respond to it going like, no, if you died, nobody will be able to take care of me, which is a very kind of dark thing in and of itself. But during the streams, your job is literally to moderate her streams. Like you're just deleting comments as they come in and you're highlighting ones that you want her to respond to. And those are like weirdly upbeat, but also like the chat is kind of weird about it. You can see like the game is doing a overemphasis on, but to the point so it's easy to absorb quickly, like parasocial relationships in the streaming world is happening in the chat. Obsession, like the weird emotional dependence that you can develop on someone when you yourself are having problems, is reflected in her relationship with P-chan, her producer, which is what she decided to name them. You can protest, but it doesn't matter. And just like that weird motivation where she's not motivated by her love of what she's doing, she's motivated by her love of the attention, and how that doesn't quite play right, and how these two personas she has effectively become more and more mirror images of each other as she leans into them. There's a lot going on here that's like, oh, I can see this as like some really clever messaging about dealing with some of these same kinds of emotional feelings. And there's definitely moments where I'm like, oh, that resonated in a way I wasn't prepared for. Fuck. But also some of the writing's really funny, and sometimes it feels weird laughing at this stuff, but I think that makes it more approachable. I mean, it definitely makes it more approachable. I think it also makes it easier to absorb any messaging that's coming in there. And maybe I'm putting messaging where the producers aren't. Maybe they're just nihilists, and they're like, yeah, fuck streaming forever. This is what streamers are like. But I don't get that. I feel like there's too much sincerity in the depiction of the two personas of our streamer. Like even though the actual woman is sometimes kind of insufferable and is clearly emotionally manipulating her SO and producer, her producer is also kind of literally emotionally manipulating her to keep her from going over the line on one of these things, of getting too stressed, of getting too obsessed with them, or of getting into too dark a place. But also, like, one time I managed to get her emotional darkness all the way down to 0, and I hit an end state of the game. She basically posts in the in-game fake Twitter, where you can see both her in-character tweets and her personal tweets. A lot of times her personal tweets which are obviously not known by her fans, are like her making fun of what she just said in character. But sometimes it feels almost performative, like she's rejecting the thing she did, even though she's kind of still maybe not actually, like she's trying to convince herself that no, this isn't who I am. I'm just saying this for popularity or whatever. But I managed to get her mental darkness down to 0, and the game quit, and it said nobody can truly have no darkness in their heart. End of the segment. End of the game. And I was bounced back to the menu. And I had to start a new run. Technically speaking, you can actually pick up a run from any day. So like if you open up a run, you can say like, I want to go back to day 9. You have 30 days to get her to 1 million fans. Because that's like, that was her personal goal she set for herself. She wanted to have 1 million fans by day 30.
So what is the goal then? Is it to maximize her? Is it maximizing her fan base while minimizing her emotional darkness?
Yes. Well, that's what I thought, and I did that. So like, I had a run. I'm about 9 or 10 runs in now. I had a run because now I don't have to read a lot. I've seen most of the streams. I occasionally discover a new one, and I have to sit there and watch it. I skip a lot of them, so I can get through a run pretty fast. I got her to day 30 with 1.5 million fans, which is way more than they wanted. Her emotional state was well maintained. I didn't drive her affection all the way to the top which is another end state where like the screen just fills with hearts, and she basically has an emotional breakdown because of she's developed an unhealthy obsession with her SO/producer. And that's just the end state of the game. And basically the end state was, yeah, you did it. And she got her goal and she's got everything she thought she wanted. But is she really happy with that? And so like the game left with this like, oh, was that really the goal? Like, I don't know that there's a happy ending. There's like 20 endings. And that might be part of it. Like part of it might just be that like, yeah, you know, when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, it's not so much about finding a happy ending. It's about just getting by and you know, continuing on.
Yeah, I guess finding a state that you can live with.
Right. So I found an ending. One of the things you can do, so like you can play video games with her, and sometimes playing video games gives her ideas for streams she wants to do. Like, I'm going to do a retro gaming stream. So I actually did a run where she was just Let's Playing a lot. And her out of persona Twitter was like, man, it's so easy to use video games because it basically just gives you free fans to come to your streams. And then I have to kind of play worse because these people want me to not be as better than them at the game. It's just basically just bad mouthing her fans on there. But one of the things you can do to hang out with her is the two of you can have sex, which the game just says that. I think it just uses hearts to indicate what it is. But literally when you see her, like she's always depicted as a chat window, even when you're not in the stream. Like it's like a video conference of her, so you can like see her there. And she just walks off the side of the screen when you pick it. And then there's hearts in a rhythmic pattern. And then she'll get on Twitter and tweet about it, or on fake Twitter. So her say so cinnamon roll pure angel persona will just tweet about like, do you have any hobbies you don't feel like you can share with the world? I have one, but it's really fun. Maybe I'll share it with you guys sometime. You know, it doesn't. And then the other one's like, I just had the best sex ever. I could do this every day. Or I just had the best heart ever, which is probably some kind of ESRB swerve to get around. There was an ending, but that's actually a really useful thing because it takes her stress way down. It takes her mental darkness way down at the cost of affection. So her affection goes up, which I say at the cost of, like, you want to keep it balanced. I one time did a run where we did that. Like, I realized every time I did it, her Twitter was counting up. So like I got the first time you got one message, second time you got a different. So like I've noticed that in one run and I kind of filed it away. And so I was like, well, how many messages are there? I'm curious. So I just kept playing. I would pick stream topics for her to do because again, that's a big part of it. That would take her affection down. So like talking about conspiracy theories. Like that took her affection down, or doing these weird, like they're not really sexual, but they're suggestive streams. Like that would bring them down. And I found out at 7, I hit an ending. If you have heart with her 7 times, you hit an ending where that's all she's really interested in anymore. And she basically quits her line of work and does that. It's like, oh, I see. That's unhealthy and weird, but okay, I get it. And then the part of actually developing her fan base, you know, you collect these stream topics you could talk about, and they have different metrics. So like if she's got a lot of video game experience, and she's established herself as streaming video games, there's a multiplier on that. So like the number of fans you're going to get from it. Each stream has like a base stat. Like which is indicated by like the number of arrows you get. It's like this stream has like a 2 arrows. So you're not going to get a ton of fans out of it, but the multipliers might drive it up. This one's got 7 big arrows because it's weird and slightly sexually suggestive. You're going to get a ton of fans if you run this one, but I mean, it is slightly suggestive. So do with it what you will. And then the things that you've done, like her communication skills will develop over time. And so she gets more bonuses for ones that are communication heavy streams where she's talking about stuff. Like there's ones where there are streams that increase her nerd cred or activities you can do outside of her work that increase her nerd cred. That will give you multipliers. Or you can run the conspiracy theory ones, which boost a stat called Down the Rabbit Hole, which has a negative impact on every other stream type except for conspiracy theory ones, where it's a huge bonus. So you could turn her into like a mentally unstable conspiracy theory nut. And they have huge negative impacts on her mental darkness. Like, this game is weird. It's very strange. It's very much going for the PC-88 look. It nails that. There is something that's like emotionally not impactful. Like, I'm not sitting here like I'm having a moment, but resonates sometimes with our kawaii angel or her real persona. That occasionally I go like, oh, I know exactly what feel they're trying to model here. This is from somebody who's seen this before, and I know exactly what that feels like. And this isn't how I solved that problem, but I guess I can see how you would get there. And there's definitely moments where I'm watching the chat react to what she's saying, and I'm having a laugh. But also there's times in there where I'm seeing things get posted, and I'm having to go, fuck, delete that shit. So yeah, like there is this weird push-pull of both parties in the relationship are kind of manipulating the other to achieve her goal, and that feels really unhealthy and unstable. But also, that's what makes it a game, and so I kind of get drawn into it. Like, I'm setting an objective. I want to see what happens if I make her really happy, but we don't hit a bunch of fans. Okay, let's see what happens. So, like, I'm playing a game, I'm trying to set a goal, but at the same time, yeah, I'm emotionally manipulating a person who's not stable. And there might be some implication that her producer, her SO, is also not necessarily the most stable. But, you know, there I won't give it too much, but there's a moment where she basically says, like, hey, I need to go do something today. Will you come with me? That was really important. And like, oh, it's like, oh, I see. That's actually a big deal for her. And she is trying to, she's not just trying to express lane her way to happiness. Like, she is trying. That was really interesting. There's a text file on her desktop I can't get to. Whenever I try to click it, her camera video moves over it, so I can't click it. I'm sure there's something I can do to get there. I am desperately trying to figure that out. I might just look it up at some point, because I kind of want to know what's written there. It's probably going to be awful. It's probably going to be upsetting. But yeah, this is a really weird product. I can see where there are people who have dealt with some internal stuff that would find this game really uncomfortable to play, and they might even find the tone to be kind of insulting. I actually found it a little bit liberating in a way. Like, not that it was irreverent, because I don't think it's irreverent. I think it's striking a tone that makes it approachable. You know, it's not easy to talk about. Stuff is not easy to talk about. So if you allow yourself to have, I don't want to say have fun with it. That's not the right word. Although I do think the game is enjoyable. But allow yourself to approach it in a way where you recognize that while it's serious, it's not great. It's not always grave. Like, it can be appreciated for what it is, and you can even have a laugh at it. But it's, you know, it requires you, be able to take a step back. And this is so many steps back from where I am that I can look at it and go like, oh, she's really out there, huh? Boy, she's in a rough spot. But also, I can then go about my day and go like, okay, she kind of likes me a little too much right now. What can I do to make her not like me? What if I make her go meet with a fan? That'll make her like me less. There we go. That's how I'll handle this emotional moment. That feels really dark and horrible, but is necessary for the mechanics of the game. Yeah, I am glad I picked this up. I really wasn't sure what to do with it. I really wasn't sure I wanted to talk about it on the show, because there's definitely people it's going to rub the wrong way. There's definitely people who are going to hear me talk about it and go like, oh, James is some kind of fucking deviant. He just wants to like emotionally control this 20-something girl who's having problems. And it's like, no, not really. But yeah, it's a real thing, and I actually kind of appreciate it. And I like it a lot. It's hard to say like, this is really fun, because it's like, is it? Is it fun? But yeah, it's it was a good experience. I'm probably going to try to get a couple more endings. I might just go look online to see what the endings are. I suspect there are endings I've dodged so far because I am genuinely trying to make sure she's not like going into dark spirals. Like if she was getting into a really bad mental darkness, and I just kept having her do therapy sessions because I'm like, no, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see how bad this can get. I'm sure there are endings that are really fucked. And I don't think I want to see them. Like I think I would actually not. It would negatively impact me to see them, so I'm just not gonna. But I might like to see what's out there, and I really need to know what's in that text file, even though I'm sure it's going to be terrible. Yeah. So that's that. Greg, do you want to do new business?
Not a great deal. I thought I might be able to talk a bit more about the Splatfest that went on the weekend prior to recording here, but I didn't actually get that much time in the end, just like right at the start, basically, because I think one of the changes, like from the last one, was I think like made it easier to like get in the tricolour battles, but yeah, by the time those actually got started, you know, because they don't kick in until midway, like, yeah, I did not play at all. That stuff happened and there was no time for Splatoon 3. So, yeah, not a lot to say. I was on Team Spicy. Kind of knew it wouldn't win the poll. That always had to be Team Sweet, which it did, but that did not only win the poll. It won everything else. The third option was Team Sour. So
that seems like just like, no, I want to feel bad. Please give it to me.
There are enjoyable sour things, but yeah, I don't know.
I would have gone with salty personally. I feel like that's probably a
big in Shelbyville, presumably.
Yeah. It tastes delicious.
It's more of a Shelbyville idea.
Is
I thought that Shelbyville like the sweet taste, like they don't.
Oh God, I'm not. I can barely remember that.
Yeah, I thought Shelbyville's the one that had the extra sour lemon tree.
Yeah, but there's Millhouse. Yeah. Anyway, there's a quote.
Oh, okay. There's a quote for everything.
The sweet taste. They love candy in Shelbyville. They love the sweet taste.
Yeah, so I think it was the poll part of it was pretty predictable, but yeah, obviously I didn't really even play that much to see how it went. But yeah, it's on the winning side for the first two, and then yeah, that was like second place. But so I've got more bloody super sea snails that I really need to have anyway, so it's not a big deal. But it's just kind of because I don't necessarily play that much of the regular Turf War unless it is a Splatfest. I'm still trying to rank up in the kind of the anarchy battles they're called now, especially since it's quite annoying. Like, you know, they're doing this whole season thing now, so it's like, okay, it came out in late summer, you know, kind of beginning of fall. And then, like, when we got into November or something, it's like, oh, it's chill season now. And what I didn't appreciate about that is that it was actually going to just reset a lot of my progress up the ranked mode. It's like, I would have played more to try and reach the threshold of getting to S rank if I'd known that. I mean, it might well have been, like, out there and I just neglected it just because, like, it didn't used to work like that in Splatoon 2 or something. But yeah, so I'm crawling my way back up with the rank battles most of the time. But so it's kind of, it's got a nice change of pace to play the Turf War when a Splatfest comes along. But I just, yeah, didn't get that much in this time. So yeah, not a huge amount to say.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for new business. I think we've done enough damage. So when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of listener mail. So stay tuned. We are back with listener mail. You can send your emails to rfn at NintendoWorldReport.com. That is rfn at NintendoWorldReport.com. John, in honor of you coming back, please say the email address.
rfn at NintendoWorldReport.com. Straight down the middle, James. No tomfoolery or shenanigans here. rfn at NintendoWorldReport.com.
I'm glad it's the 1950s here, and we're gonna have none of these hijinks.
That's right, Daddy. You're a cool cat.
All right. Well, close enough. Close enough. All right. John, would you read the first email? Which I have not pasted them in the chat, so hold on.
Exactly.
Let me do that. Bam.
David writes, "Hey RFN crew, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is undoubtedly the biggest Nintendo Switch game of the year. I've been thinking about two common complaints about Breath of the Wild, which were breakable weapons and a lack of a traditional dungeon structure. How would you feel if Tears of the Kingdom added more traditional Zelda elements back and got rid of the breakable weapons? Also, do you think Nintendo can get away with keeping the same map from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, aka pulling an RGG studio? Thanks, and keep up the great work."
We already know it's not entirely the same map because we have verticality now.
Yeah.
So, like, if the ground was largely the same, but they've added verticality, is it the same map? It's a related map.
And if a tree falls in the forest, then...
Well, it probably talks because it's the Kokiri Forest and it's screaming in pain.
Yeah, well, we didn't hear anything like the stuff that happened with Majora's Mask, right? Like, they did not say, this is going to be... we're going to make this one really quick, guys, using mostly assets from the previous game.
I mean, they kind of did.
They did? Okay.
They were pretty clear that this was going to be a fast follow game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, I mean that was the goal.
That was the intent.
And when you looked at it, you could tell. I don't know that we understood that. Like, hey, I think some of the assets were from like the 64DD project. I mean, obviously they created a ton of new assets for the game. But they may not have actually had any of the Ura Zelda assets in there. Now that I think about it, like those might have all just been saved for. I can't remember what they called it now.
Master Quest.
Yeah, the Master Quest stuff. But I mean,
Breath of the Wild. Like, did they say the sequel would be a quickly made one?
No, because they didn't announce it for a while, and then
that's true. Yeah, we kind of assumed they were working on something, but how direct it would be and what form it would take, was they said nothing for a few years, and then we had the teaser, and kind of suggested it would be a pretty direct follow-up at that point, which obviously a lot of the really sort of mainline Zelda games are not that direct follow-ups to their kind of forerunners, and many times it's just a completely different time period. There's like some connections narratively, but they might be kind of vague or in the background for people that kind of actually care about them to find, but for other people just don't worry about it. But this, even though it's gonna, as James mentioned at the start, essentially, there's going to be more than 6 years between the release dates, which is, like a big gap by any historical Zelda standard, let alone when it is a direct follow-up. And that, I guess that's one of the intriguing things about how much the audience at large, obviously I was asking for our thoughts on it, but it makes me wonder, in terms of, how similar would the map be? How, similar some of the mechanics be? When it's been more than 6 years, will people just be more, okay with it being more similar in some ways, but then in other ways, it's like, you took 6 years to make the same game again? I can kind of see, I guess, but it depends on your sort of point of view, but, I could see either reaction, the length makes people more demanding of how different it should be, or alternatively, they're more happy to kind of revisit that style, having had such a number of years between it. I mean, for myself, I played it a great deal in 2017. I have not really touched it for a significant length of time since. Some of that was probably because I had a physical game card, because that was just what made sense, price-wise, buying the system and that together at the time. Kind of, like kind of just wish I had it digitally and it was easier to return to, or it probably could have upgraded it at some time, but would have cost a certain amount of money for a game that I had already played quite thoroughly. So you're not that eager to do it. But at this point, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, if the sequel wasn't coming out, I might be like, yeah, I could play that again, even though it's this, great, massive thing that's a little bit kind of, it's a bit foreboding, when you get these huge games for me these days. But, no, I kind of feel like I'm quite happy. I may be quite happy if it is really quite similar at this point because it's been long enough. But, yeah, I'm not sure how people will, kind of respond at large to that.
Well, you gotta imagine, like, I understand that it kind of has to be mostly the same map if it's gonna occur, if the action is set still in Hyrule, because the place is not gonna change that much, you would think. Unless there is some sort of cataclysm, or maybe they're rebuilding, or...
I mean, he's literally called the Calamity Ganon. I think they've got.
But that obviously that already happened, and you killed that. So like, it's well now there's like the second impact of Calamity.
Well, I mean, but. Yeah, I mean, they could do anything they want with it.
Sure. I was going to say, it's like, on the one hand, I think a lot of the reason why they often don't have them be like really kind of direct follow-ups is because they don't want to be wedded to any elements from previous games. They don't want the story to handcuff them, in any sense with like the game design ideas, like, because it's just like, well, we don't actually care about that much. So why should it affect us? But in this case, it seems like, well, maybe they are tying themselves down a bit by following it up so closely. But in the end, even if it is narratively quite a direct follow-up, I'm sure they could just sort of do some hand-wavy things and say, whatever suits them from a game design point of view, because that remains the priority.
Yeah, and like the way that they like to put Easter eggs in places. The map for Breath of the Wild was filled with them, with references to the previous games. Like I think that if they wanted to, like they maybe could pull off the same kind of stuff with the map in the sequel, compared to the first game. Like, maybe like where you think you're gonna find a fairy here, but like, actually that's where the dungeon is. Things like that. Like they could switch it up quite a bit.
But even stuff like in Breath of the Wild, way out in the northwest, out in the cold, where you have to have solved the cold. Like this is beyond just like, I'm gonna try to hoof it out there real quick and survive. There are places where like, hey, you have to have the right clothes or the right food, but you can probably force your way through if you try. And then there are areas where it's like, no, you have to have solved the problem to get here.
Yeah, you're gonna be there too long.
Yeah. Like there's like a cabin way out in the Arctic territory that like you've really got to have solved the problem to get there. And it's super remote and it's out in the middle of snow and there's really nothing there except things that are deadly and the world. So like there's no reason for you to have found it unless you're just obsessively looking everywhere, which is how I found it. Like they could do something there like, hey, I remember there was a shed, there was like a mini game up there. Like, oh, I remember that was up there, and you go up there and it's gone. And or it's in ruins and something else is there, or something bad is waiting for you there instead. Like they can play on what your expectations are. So if you don't remember the game map, it's no big deal. You're still getting to discover new stuff as you go. You're having that experience for the first time. If you do remember the game map, they are, to use the joke phrase, subverting your expectations. So you're still discovering new things. You're just discovering new things in a place where you found something else before. Mm-hmm. But I mean, honestly, they could also just blow up the world and just be like, I mean, something's got to explain why the sky is full of floating rocks now. So
yeah, and Link's been like in another coma or something, and his hair's grown a bit this time, and he's got
cyber implants.
He's got a guardian arm, and
something fucked has happened. Like that first trailer
from the X-Men now, something.
Oh no, it's the worst X-Men.
It's there'll be stuff, and it'll just be, like I say, they always keep it pretty malleable most of the time, and even if this isn't a total clean slate, which usually when you have these big gaps it is, I think they won't let them that tie them down.
Exploration is such a big part of what made Breath of the Wild good that they've got to emphasize that again. Like that was one of the key lessons that, I've talked about a bunch of times. Like if you played Xenoblade X before you played Breath of the Wild, you see the DNA immediately. And that's the thing that was most important. It was that, like, I'm going to explore this space in a way that open world games don't usually have you do it, where you're exploring it from multiple vantage points. It's not like I'm going to put things on the map when you feel like you're actually having to go physically go, that looks weird, I'm going to go investigate it. And it's just the feel, just like the how the world felt. Like, the value of that and what made that game good and what made that game memorable and what made it connect with so many people is so obvious and so obviously known to Nintendo and to their internal studios who advise them on the game. They're not going to pass on that again by just going, just fuck it, same world. So they'll figure that part out.
It could be an opportunity to make it less sparse. Populate it more. These people have been rebuilding. They continue to rebuild. Because a lot of the map, it's more than just like this mountain here, this mountain there. Like it's also like the encounters that you make. And so, as long as, I don't know, like the feeling of the game could change a lot, just by changing the enemies, just by changing the villages and the quests. I'm not saying anything right now. I'm just saying the game can be different, even though the map is the same.
It was a big space where a lot of it was empty space. So, like, even if the space itself was not that different in some ways, the way you populate it could change, the experience a fair bit. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, like, to historicalize it, like, the area around the Tiber is what it is, but like depending on what time of history you were there, it was a very different place. You could do that even if the geography is largely the same, change it up pretty dramatically. But just by what people are doing around it, and if you have to throw bananas at their feet to make sure they're not fakes.
It'd be interesting to see just how much, because I think obviously some of the appeal of Breath of the Wild was the sort of relative novelty of it. Right. Not that obviously it wasn't in, a certain kind of vein of design that kind of developers outside of Nintendo had already been working in. And of course, it was incorporating a number of things that had been part of the Zelda series before. But relative to the kinds of, how similar the 3D Zelda games had sort of been up to that point, it was, a change, and people responded to it favourably. I think both because of just how well it worked in a kind of absolute, out of context sense, but also very much the in context, this is different, and it emphasizes different things than, Skyward Sword and so forth had come to emphasize about the 3D Zelda kind of design, and they like that. I guess, how much that is diminished, by the fact that it's going to be, another one in that style, and how much that's affected by the fact that it is a 6-year gap, and all that kind of stuff. Harder to say. I mean, I would say very much what I said back then, I believe, is that I could have stood for a few more traditional Zelda the ideas to have survived or be reintroduced in a future game, because the biggest thing was it just felt like a little bit too blanket policy for me of like, okay, everything's non-linear, everything, you can do anything in any order, you can go straight to Hyrule Castle and give it a go if you feel like it, that paradigm, like, I like that idea, to shake things up especially, but also just in itself, it was kind of interesting. But the way that it kind of fed down, like, to a more micro level of like, okay, we've got these 4 dungeons that are, the divine beasts. And when you're in those, it's like, okay, well, basically this is about accomplishing 5 tasks or whatever it was, like these terminals.
Right.
That are in there. And you could do those in any order. And it's like, I think we could have a dungeon nested in a non-linear game that has a linear element to it. I think we could afford that. And because that was the problem. I think, you had so few of the kind of the big dungeon kind of environments in the game, and they were all aesthetically very similar, and they were all structurally very similar, which is not what the dungeons were like in the old games. They could be they could look completely different, and they could have a completely different alright, certain things, we all know got to be very formulaic in terms of, you come in, initially you don't have the sort of specific item of the dungeon, and you have to kind of do a few things without it before, but it's kind of hinting that you need this thing. Then you get the thing, you solve those puzzles with it, you get the boss key, you fight the boss, right? And you kill the boss with the thing.
Right.
Yes, that was, but in terms of how think of Twilight Princess, like you could have a non-linear dungeon, like the Snow Peak one with the Yeti, or you could have an entirely linear one, like the Temple of Time, right next to each other. Whereas, like, those, because they had this, like, blanket sort of diktat of, like, every single damn thing in this game must be non-linear, they were all, felt very much the same. I mean, they had different themings, around what the divine beasts were and the environments that they lived in.
Basically just color at the
end.
But
it wasn't a lot, was it? They felt really kind of, I don't know. In some ways, I guess when you have few of them and they're not like the bread and butter of the experience, you could look at it 2 ways. You could say, well, yeah, that's not what this game is about. It's not a big deal. But on the other hand, it's like, it could have been like a really big event when you got to one because there's so few of them. But it didn't feel like that. It just kind of felt like, well, I guess, we still got to have some dungeons and some bosses, haven't we? And they were just kind of there. So I don't know whether it's about, bringing in more linear, more traditional elements, but one way or another, there's a lot of room for improvement on that element in the game if they choose to bring it back. Because that would be the other alternative, just simply to just say, no, you know what, it doesn't really fit in this paradigm, so let's just excise it and, leave the puzzle solving stuff to the micro dungeons, the shrines.
Yeah, like, I actually would have been fine without the Divine... I didn't enjoy the Divine Beast dungeons very much, but I think one thing that's not really mentioned on them is they're not super well designed either. Like, the puzzles aren't super great in them. They don't feel very good. And, they have to be solvable. Whereas with the shrines, with the exception of a handful, don't have to be solvable. So, like, they can they are solvable, but they don't have to be solvable to the mass audience. Like, the puzzles in a traditional Zelda game have to have a sort of maximum difficulty ceiling because they need to be...
they're critical to progress through the game. So, if you don't want to lock out a certain percentile of your players from actually finishing the game, you've got to calibrate it accordingly.
Right. I think there's a good example of one of those in Ocarina of Time where... It was Ocarina of Time, it wasn't Majora's Mask. Where there's a big stone column and it's across a river and you need to cross it. And the only way to do it is recognize that there are bomb flowers at the base of the column that you can shoot with an arrow. But that's dependent on your TV being big enough to make out the bomb flowers.
Also, N64 resolution.
Yeah. So on my TV, I couldn't see that. And I actually had to look at a guide and I'm like, oh, those are bomb flowers? Fuck! And sure enough, that got me through. But that was a critical path puzzle. And without that, I couldn't solve it. By having the shrines, they can do dumb shit where like the solution was turn the gamepad over. That's the solution to the puzzle. Like weird, non-linear, Layton-esque thinking where Layton could do the same thing. There were critical path puzzles and non-critical path puzzles. And the non-critical path puzzles were usually the ones that had all the bullshit in them. Where it's like, you're going to do what? And then it's like the answer is, pick the person who's off the screen or some garbage. Like that was liberating. And so like the actual dungeon puzzles, they were whatever.
Yeah, but even though, that's the thing though, isn't it? It's like even the Divine Beast, you didn't have to do them. So I get
right.
But
if you wanted to experience the story, you did.
Yeah, true. So I think they probably did feel like more of a need to like moderate them, maybe that you couldn't have something that was as potentially kind of obscure or esoteric as a solution to a shrine. But like you could afford to take risks with the Divine Beast more so than you could with the old dungeons, where it's just this is essentially a linear path. This must be overcome for players to continue enjoying the game. So yeah, I don't think they've really capitalized on that either, like one of the pluses of the paradigm. So I'm not sure exactly what I would recommend to make those better, or maybe even like just like omit them or whatever. But yeah, it feels like that's one of the. It's because obviously I have too many complaints about the game. I rather enjoyed it, but that would be one of the areas. The breakable weapons thing, I wonder about that in the sense that obviously there was a fair amount of people that some were not that hot on it when it came up the first time. I wonder if that will be more people the second time, like because I'm not sure. For me, it was kind of an element that again it kind of made it a different kind of it fed into the fact it was a different kind of experience. It fed into this kind of survival element of, everything's a resource and, food and, as you've got alluded to with the cold areas, like being able to like survive in the air, because obviously there's also the volcano where it's ridiculously hot, and like the breakable weapons were part of that as well, in terms of, you're living off the land in a weaponry sense, like killing things and taking their weapons or finding weapons in chests and stuff like this. And, like that was something that, again, as a newer element, a relatively novel element, I felt like, kind of engaged with. I'm not sure if it's like just the same this time, whether I'll engage with it in as positive a way.
I think it, because of the nature of this game, and because of the nature of the world, and this isn't going to change because if you were going to change like the nature of the world to this degree, it's not even worth making it a sequel of Breath of the Wild, because the nature of the world of Breath of the Wild, as the name implies, it's about the wild. It's not about Link and his happy like experience. Like it's about the wilderness and the environment he's in. And so the breakable weapons thing makes total sense, not just because like, weapons degrade after use, which they do, but because it forced you not just to like constantly be, judicious with what weapons you decide to use. It also forced you to use the other mechanisms the game gives you to solve the problem of there is a thing there I want dead.
Yeah, it forces you to interact with the world, whereas something like Elden Ring, for example, your weapons never degrade because the focus on that is combat. Right. And that would just inhibit the main thrust of the gameplay. Whereas the main thrust of the gameplay in Breath of the Wild is to interact with the world around you.
And as in Zelda games, there's like a power ramp that as you get better and better swords and stuff, that like the enemies you were fighting before aren't that interesting anymore. They're just like, oh, swack, you're dead. Or as you get more hearts, like they really can't hurt you anymore. Now, Breath of the Wild solves this two ways. One, they diminish your power by taking away your weapons. But as you go further in the game and as you get better at the combat, you're not using your weapons as fast and you're getting access to more and more stuff. And by like halfway through the game, I bought the house to store the weapons I had stacked up because I had so damn many. And then having all these weapons actually became a benefit. Like I could decide to just fucking launch a weapon at somebody for the advantage of just heaving it directly at their head. Like, weapons became a diversion. Weapons became a tool. Weapons were no longer like, well, this is my sword, I'm going to use it. There are many like it, but this one's mine. To like, I've got this sword. It's the middle of a lightning storm. I'm going to chuck it at that thing and let them get electrocuted. It's going to cost me the sword, but I don't care. I've got 6 of them. Like, it was almost the inverse of weapons. I had so many that they became disposable in ways that no other Zelda game could ever make them because they were breakable. The fact that they could be destroyed meant that you could use them in these non-obvious or non-like linear thinking style of encounter. But the other part that I thought that made the breakable weapons really work is it forced you to consistently evaluate how you're playing the game. You know, I'm out of swords. Well, I guess I better learn to use a goddamn spear. Or I'm fighting something and I don't need the sword right now, and the sword is what I'm best with. I'm going to use the spear, or I'm going to use a club. I'm going to go hunt down that enemy because I want his weapon. Like, that was a thing I did. Like, later in the game where I was trying to get, like, specific types of weapons to solve specific types of problems, I would go hunt this dude down because I was going to take it from him, or I'd try to get them when they're disarmed. Like, because we've had Zelda games where you can pick up weapons, like in Wind Waker. You could pick up a weapon and they would break. But there was never the idea of, like, I'm going to go hunt this thing down because I want that specific weapon. I actually think the breakable weapons, it adds dimensionality to Breath of the Wild that if it wasn't there, would make the whole thing feel more tedious.
Well, and again, it's one of the cases, I think, where that whole kind of, we're going to have every layer of the game's design kind of be infused with this, like, explore, experiment, non-linear, multi sort of solution philosophy. I think it's one of the areas where they kind of that does work, but more so than like making the Divine Beast non-linear. I think it fits. It fits in with the whole philosophy of everything else about the game. So yeah, to some extent, whether it will fit in this one will depend on, how much that philosophy, continues to kind of run through the whole game. I would guess yes, because I think that's pretty much, like, again, if you're doing something, you're going to market and, appeal to consumers as, this is a direct follow-up to that particular Zelda game, to Breath of the Wild, then I feel it'd be, it's a misnomer if you don't have at least that spirit running through it still, even if it might manifest itself in some different ways.
And I must say, Link was in a pretty sorry state in Breath of the Wild. His state looks much worse in this game. Like, he looks way more ragged. I think that the breakable weapons thing, I actually found that once I got the Master Sword, it was kind of like, oh, well, I like it. It made a lot of the encounters feel samey-er, because I would used it a lot. Now, granted, the Master Sword would give out, and then it would have to recharge, but it didn't take that long to recharge. The bigger thing for me is the stupid Blood Moon cycle, where the enemies would just get stronger and become a different color. I think that needs to go away. I think the enemies can get stronger. I don't think it should be like a linear ramp up where they just do more damage, they can take more hits. And I don't think they should be color-coded. I would just think, like, have the enemies start reacting to you more. Have the enemies start to be out in bigger numbers. Like, that would make more sense. If Link's out there raiding, Bobacan villages or encampments, you would assume their response wouldn't be to turn gray and start hitting harder. It would be to just not spend as much time hanging around the campfire eating meat rather than, like, patrolling. And so you could just increase their activity and do more things like that. So it feels more organic. It feels less like, okay, we're now you're in the black and silver difficulty tier. Have fun. And just have more variety in enemies. There really aren't that many enemy types. But I think the idea of, like, the limitations the gameplay set, weather's one that come up a lot. Why can't I climb in the rain? Have you tried to climb in the rain? It sucks. I actually thought that was a fitting restriction. Like, we've talked about it before. It forced you to have a plan. Like, it forced you to think about what you were going to do sometimes. You know, when I went and launched raids on the castle, a lot of times to steal weapons, because there were really good weapons in the basement, I had to think about the weather, because I wasn't strong enough to go through the front gate. Because if you haven't played Breath of the Wild, if you go through the front gate, all hell's going to break loose. Because there's all kinds of traps waiting for you. There's multiple, I'm blanking on it, the horse people.
Lionels.
Yeah, there's like multiple Lionels waiting for you. There's ambushes everywhere. There are guardians. There's the flying guardian. Like, if you go through the front gate, you've got a rough battle ahead of you. And I've done it. I've breached the front gate. It's not easy. If you want to sneak around, though, you can go into the castle really early and steal some really good stuff and get back out and basically do it stealth. And that game forced you to, like, that's something that no Zelda game really had before. Like, Wind Waker had stealth, but it was like get in a barrel, like it's a Warner Brothers cartoon. Like, this was like
and also you pretty much had to do it. Like, there was these prescribed parts of the game where it's like, okay, this is the stealth section, you know, whereas, as you mentioned, it's more, again, we're in line with the whole paradigm of just like, okay, you know, multi-solutions. How do you want to approach it? Do you want to just, you know, kind of wait until you've done enough shrines, that you've got enough hearts and everything that you can actually just take this on head first? Or, you know, you might be able to kind of do some shortcuts if you're willing to sneak around. Or like you said, sometimes you might want to try and kill enemies, you know, by sneaking around and then like doing some stuff like with the environment, with the, you know, your runes, you know, to like blow stuff up, or using the magnesis or all that to preserve the weapons you've got, you know, so you don't wear them out and all. Right. It's just, it's so much part of that whole, just like, there's going to be multiple ways of doing this and kind of expressing, you know, your kind of approach to the world.
Yeah, and it forces you, things that impede you from just doing the path of least resistance, which would be, I'm going to go out there with the sword and shield and play the Zelda game I know how to play. And I'm just going to whack enemies until they die. Like, those limitations are what force you to explore the other options and go out there and say, like, okay, what else can I do? What else can I hit? How else can I solve this? Do I need to solve this problem? Can I just go around this problem? Like, do I have to deal with this enemy directly in front of me right now? Or can I just go like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to walk around you. Like, you know, my trick for Breath of the Wild Castle was I would start a fire on the opposite side of the moat and use that to get an extra burst of air current so I could glider over the wall, so I didn't have to climb the wall, because there are enemies on the wall. I wanted to get over the wall quick. And then make a back run for the terrace that backs into Zelda's room. And like, that was basically my trick to get in there quick. I got caught in that in the rain, and I was like, oh fuck, what do I do? I'm stuck here. And I couldn't climb the wall. I couldn't climb the castle, so I couldn't get into it. I couldn't get out. And I basically solved the problem by remembering you can start a fire. We can't start a fire in the rain, but Zelda's terrace was enough of a rain shelter. Like, all these cool things, like, a lot of work went into making the mechanic of, okay, there's actually a terrace here. You could start a fire and just camp till the rain ends. Like, if you took out the things that don't make the experience smooth. Like, yeah,
it's the frictions, isn't it? Exactly. That's right. And the breakable weapons is one of those, like, for sure. So, you know, like, I don't know, maybe I'm sure they've listened to goodness knows how much feedback and all that. So maybe not all of these kind of frictional elements will return, you know, maybe some of them will get softened, or, you know, maybe they'll just come up with like new ones. So it's like, okay, oh yeah, well, you remember those old frictions you didn't like, they're gone. But like, with the other hand, they just bring new ones in, so the experience still balances out, because that's the point. It is a balance, isn't it? It's like, if you don't have the stuff that is, you know, that does slow you down or kind of defines different pathways or alternatives, then you don't have that same feeling of like, okay, well, you know, I'm in this world that actually like has rules and, you know, physics and all this different weather, all this different stuff. And it's how I kind of, you know, bring my creative thinking to it that determines, you know, the adventure that you have.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to one last email. Guy, would you read the second email, please?
Sure. A-Money writes, "My rude dudes from another crude brood." Brood? Yeah.
No, it's brood. It's just what a phrase.
Yes. A burning question on the theme everyone has been crying out for: economics.
Yeah!
Specifically the $68.7 billion price tag on the tentative Activision/Blizzard purchase by Microsoft. For a frame of reference, that is more than the GDP of 125 countries, over 1.5 times the sale price of Twitter, and over 15 times the amount Disney paid for the Marvel IP. The Dallas Cowboys are valued at a paltry approximate $8 billion. I appreciate World of Warcraft and Call of Duty are juggernauts in the gaming realm, but has gaming really eclipsed the other entertainment to such a degree? With all the celebrity of sport, movies, and music, is the video game industry the actual alpha dog no one seems aware of in the public zeitgeist, for whatever reason? And if yes, why is that? Stay tubular. Here's to a great 2023.
Yeah, another kind of a fun fact I saw yesterday was that they were talking about how much money Genshin Impact has made. It has been on the market for 2 years, and it has made $4 billion in revenue.
It's a free game, by the way.
I could not believe. I was blown away by that.
Genshin makes bank, especially in China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a free game with gacha, and like that's the money it makes. It's on basically everything. It is, from what I have seen, a perfectly good game that has found ways to maximize the FOMO of its gacha to get people to invest a lot of money to get their favorite waifu or husbando so that they don't miss them when they're in their springtime winter wear, which I know I just said 2 seasons at the same time. Fuck it. I don't give a shit. But I mean, I think the other thing is, money's not real. That's when we're talking.
There's your title.
Are worth what people are willing to pay for it, isn't it? I mean,
right.
just with the Cowboys example, it's like, whatever Forbes values like sports franchises at or whatever. It might well be based on, some very sensible criteria, the assets of the team, their estimated revenue streams, the value of the brand, all this kind of stuff. None of that matters. But then, when it actually goes up for sale, it's just like, if there's somebody out there that's just like, I want to pay 15, and then that's what, I mean, we've seen that quite a few times when these things go, and there aren't many of them, the North American Sports League, franchises, when they do become available, they could go for quite a lot in excess of, what is considered to be their kind of underlying value.
Right.
And in terms of, what Microsoft has valued Activision Blizzard at, I mean, how is that? Is that really, a sort of ruthless approximation of what the underlying value of all that is? I don't know. It's way beyond my skill to, kind of value that, especially such a kind of, what was already a kind of conglomerate of multiple companies over time.
Well, and it was also a damaged brand, because of course, keep in mind, this is the origin story of this, at least as it's been reported, is the head of gaming, Phil Spencer, over at Microsoft, called the CEO of Activision Blizzard as they were dealing with their various scandals, of varying degrees of severity, and basically told them, like, this needs to stop. Basically reading them the riot act as a platform holder. And apparently all three of the platform holders gave them the "this needs to stop" speech, in some form or another. I think Microsoft and Nintendo both publicly made a comment. I think Sony's was more like behind the scenes, like, yo, this needs to stop. But
didn't Valve also say something? So the four platform holders, I guess. Yeah,
and the follow on was, but hey, if you just want to get out, let's talk. And look, when I say money's not real. Money's real to you and me. But as you have more money, it becomes less real. And I've experienced that in my own life, where it's like, when I didn't have money was very real all the time. And then, like, when I started to have more money became less of a thing I think about. And so when I say real, it's obviously real. It exists. I'm not a fucking cryptocurrency evangelist. That shit's not real.
It's not as scarce in that immediate sense. When it's backed by, various things. There's some of these things that we already talked about when, you try and value an asset or whatever, an entity, it is, how many, the kind of ongoing revenue streams you have, the assets that you own. It's like, well, we're backed by those things. So if we had to borrow money to get more, we could do that. Because we're obviously with the governments of nation states. I mean, essentially, when we borrow money, they are borrowing against the fact that they have the legal authority to tax the populace of the country and its earnings, in perpetuity. So, that's what, they're backed by when they do that. That's how they can, even if they are going to run a deficit, in the near term, it's like, well, there's one entity that has the legal right to, take money off its populace, through the law. And then you can use that to, at some point, actually service the debt or whatever. So, yeah, it's still real, but it's less immediate. There's more layers of separation all of a sudden to not like, could you raise money because you've got a claim on this, or, you make this much off this other thing, or any of that. It's just, for a lot of people, it's just like, no, you just have to have it right now. To give, otherwise you're not getting what you want. Whereas these larger entities, they have all these other ways of essentially being able to sort of draw on, to get money to pay for things, and obviously in some cases that's where you get, some things that are very specifically debt leverage buyouts, where it's like, yeah, we totally don't have the money to buy this thing, but we could raise money, and eventually the thing we're going to buy is going to pay for the, servicing that debt. And that you've seen that happen, certainly in sports, and various other, and in the corporate world more generally. So, obviously in this case, Microsoft owns such an enormous amount of other things already. There's no
pittance.
Yes, but again, you do wonder. Obviously, the value of Twitter was mentioned, which again, even the buyers themselves eventually just like, yeah, actually, no, it wasn't worth what I said I was willing to pay for it, because there was like all these bots. So can I back out? No, I can't back out. Oh shit. But, people will, pay more than things seem to be worth sometimes. I think, in part because you've seen this in sports as well. Sometimes when you have something that's been troubled or mired in controversy or misconduct, the chance to kind of be seen as the kind of conquering hero, the virtuous party is like, oh, we're gonna spend the money and make it right. We're gonna, that old owner that said unacceptable things, we're pushing him out, and we're not gonna lowball it. We're not gonna be like, oh, look, you've tarnished this asset, so we can come in and have it at a nice little discount. We'll pay all the money to show how wonderfully virtuous we are, and as some sort of brand building exercise you could construe it as, or possibly in some cases just pure ego building. That doesn't really have a pecuniary component at all. It's just like, I want to feel good about the fact that I can do this, so I'm going to do it.
Hey, Greg, has anybody associated with forming Microsoft's culture as it currently exists been involved in an activity like the one you just described?
I believe the Clippers would satisfy that particular. I'm not that up on basketball, but I do remember what happened there. And yes, exactly. That was very much what that sort of pattern. And this, of course, is on a vastly bigger scale. I mean, I don't. How many? What did it end up being? Was it $2 billion or something for the Clippers?
Something like that, yeah. But then he went and spent like $1.5 billion building them an arena. And
sure, yeah. But again, that was way above the perceived value of the Clippers at the time.
Right.
To go back to if the Cowboys are worth $8 billion, it was certainly way above it, but they were willing to do it because, it just seemed, I guess, like they wanted to be seen as a force for, progress in that area of just these attitudes towards the players and all this. Like, we want to be part of getting that out of the NBA and bringing in a new era of greater kind of respect.
Well, and when you sell an asset, and when you buy an asset, when you sell an asset, there's always the choice of hey, I've got multiple bids, which definitely the Clippers would have had multiple bids. And if Activision Blizzard had been on the market, they would have had multiple bids. They weren't on the market, at least not explicitly.
Well, the thing is, with something like Activision Blizzard, I would see, even compared to, sports franchises are big things. There's not a huge number of entities in the world that have the wealth to bid on them. But something the size of Activision Blizzard really limits the fit. You are talking about a remarkably small number of other entities that could even conceive of actually buying the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah. I mean, I just looked it up, and Microsoft, their profits, not revenue, profits are about $15 billion per quarter.
So I looked up their annual revenue last fiscal year 22.
Mm-hmm.
$198 billion in revenue. That's
revenue.
They said that the what was it? The 43 billion is then 125 GDPs. This is probably closer to 200 plus GDPs.
Yeah, and again, I mean, they're clearing $15 billion.
Yeah, they're a nation state. A powerful nation state.
In a quarter, they're $15 billion. So they're banking in a year. They will effectively pay off this deal.
Yes,
with profit.
And the other thing
money they just have laying around.
The other thing we said many times about Microsoft is because they are such a sprawling corporation and because they make such remarkable profits, in certain areas of their business and of course overall, it allows them to do these things that are not actually profitable. The whole games division has not been a winner on its own terms for the past 20 years, but they can more than afford it because they see some value in it and all that. So again, the idea that does it, entirely make immediate sense to pay this much money for Activision Blizzard? Well, doesn't have to. Their whole game, they make so much money, as John said, they can still afford it, they can more than afford it, and if they see some value in it, and some of that value is presumably not in immediate, kind of dollars and cents terms, it's, again, being able to be this sort of, create some perception that they are, a force for good in the world of corporate governance. However you want to, however much anybody, actually believes that, and then maybe they want to create that impression, then this seemingly all of a sudden makes sense to them. Although it is quite troubled, isn't it? Because it's, that's not, quite appropriately really has run into issues with, competition committees and, various entities globally that oversee, could this be considered monopolistic at this point?
Yeah. The thing that's also important is the offer had to be big because, like I said, officially, Activision wasn't on the market. And Activision always had the choice of saying, nah, we're not interested. So, these big numbers sometimes are big numbers because they have to be that big So the investors are going to say, no, we're making, like, I didn't plan to sell, but now I want to sell.
That's too good to turn down. Yeah, it's just
Right.
like, you know what, given whatever uncertainty's going on, it's like, you know, there's sometimes with that kind of uncertainty around like a scandal, for instance, or it could be other reasons like all the global tumult that we've been going through and all that. You know, some investors, the risk-loving ones, will still say, you know what, I don't want to sell. You know, like, we could come out on the other side of the uncertainty and it actually be worth way more than what it's worth right now. So you really have to put a big premium on it to get those people, the risk-loving investors, say, no, even I'm just going to cash out at that price. Thank you.
And so that's part of the reason why the number has to be big. You've got all these big institutional investors. You need to be able to say, like, hey, we've researched and we spent a bunch of time getting into these positions. Because look, if you're buying, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of shares for an institutional investment, like, you didn't just do that on a whim. A bunch of time went into it. Like, she's saying, yeah, we're going to back out now. We're going to walk away from this thing that we thought was important and just take the money and run. Because then they have to go also deal with the fact they now have this money. They're going to have to get taxed on that money. They're going to have to then apply that money somewhere else because, of course, they're an investment firm, not a cash holding institution. So it's a lot of work just to take the money and run. So you got to make it really worth their time to take the money and run. So Microsoft probably saw an opportunity that they could make a deal. They could throw a big number out there that might shock the investors into not saying, like, hey, let's go out on, Microsoft's interested in buying. Let's go out on the market and start a bidding war. Like, you want to get this is the offer, take it or leave it mode. Like, you want to control the negotiation the whole time. You want to force them to make the sale choice. You want to say, hey, and also because this is an institution that was likely headed for congressional hearings anyway due to the scandals all around them, that you could say, like, hey, we're taking this troubled asset and we're going to make them model citizens. Regulators, don't get involved in trying to stop the deal because you're gonna harm these other people. And Microsoft actually wrote that in their response to the, like, one of the things the antitrust committee was like, well, Sony's complaint was, you're going to make the games not on our system. Microsoft said, no, we're not going to do that. In fact, we're preemptively announcing that if the deal goes through, we're going to bring Call of Duty to Switch.
Yeah.
For like
10-year deal
to Nintendo systems for 10 years, where they haven't been forever. And it's like, they actually said this, if you deny the deal, you'll make this game available on less platforms, not more. Like, they are absolutely putting it out there to say, like, look, we're coming in to make things better in the market. If you turn the deal down, you're committing to the current dark present. Like, they may have absolutely seen this as an opportunity to get leverage on both the regulators and on the people they're buying the company from. Like, yeah, we're going to give you more money to make this thing happen fast and to make this not turn into a bidding war. And so the KSA doesn't show up with their fat paychecks. Like, we talk about, like, oh, how does this compare to other industries? Well, we're probably about to see it in the absolute blow up that is not in any way, shape, or form dissimilar from what is going on in WWE right now, where the chairman of the company, the founder, kind of founder of this iteration of the company, was forced out because he was using company money to pay off people that he may have been having, we'll say, less than appropriate relationships with. The degree to which he was forcing himself on them is unclear. Some of the other executives, it's more clear. And so he was kicked out and the company effectively ran it, but he was still like an 80% shareholder. So he forced his way back in because he's going to sell the company now. And so in the first like 3 days of this, we've had rumors the Saudis bought the company, and then actually, no, they didn't buy the company. This was just a dumb rumor that got started up. But Greg, to your point of like, who can absorb this? This is a company that makes billions of dollars in revenue a year and trending up. So you don't have to sell that company. It's privately owned or nearly privately owned. There are some investors. It's making billions of dollars a year and it's super profitable. So like whatever calculation you have for the value of the company, it's more than that. It's way more than that.
Yeah, because again, you've got to put some sort of premium on it to make it something that anyone would relinquish.
Right. And also, it's got a brand name that you cannot reproduce. It's got 80 years of history. It's got huge tape libraries. It's got all these trademarks. It's got a value beyond the number. And so there really are only basically 10 players who can buy this thing. And yeah, KSA is one of them. They have an existing business relationship where they run shows there. For literally $1 billion, they'll go run a show there for a night. So yeah, they take the blood money. But lots of people get to buy a house off one night of work because they took the blood money. But like, you could think about the companies involved who can do it. Like, you could probably name most of them. NBC Universal Group, who they already have existing business relationships with. Disney Corp. Whatever Paramount's calling themselves now. I might have just hit the end of the list. Like, it really is like, this is going to be a big, huge acquisition that somebody's going to make. It's going to blow the doors off whatever the number is. Like, 10 billion is the absolute fucking floor. And that's probably way too low. So, yeah, in those kinds of situations where it gets to market versus Activision Blizzard where it didn't get to market, everybody knows everybody's bidding against each other. So they're going to have to put big numbers out there. Whereas if you're in control right away, like, you start the whole negotiation, just go like, I'm just going to give you $40 billion to not even go to the marketplace. That's probably better for everybody rather than it turning into a bidding war. And
there's always a price for greater certainty. That's,
right.
And people are willing to pay for that because in the end, it's probably good business. Lets you get on with other things more quickly, which is going to save you money.
Yeah. Like if this turns into like a bidding war between Fox, Disney, and NBC Universal Group, all of which have existing relationships with this company, and for premium live television content, which is the only thing that makes money on TV these days, like, the number could double from what would have been an acceptable offer 5 years ago, just because once there is like a competition part. Once you're in a bidding war, and I've seen this I've worked in a business that is adjacent to auctions. Once you get suckered into a bidding war, it's over. Because your brain is broken now, and you're just going to throw money at the problem. So I honestly, this is probably a tight bit of business by Microsoft to just throw a big number at it. I don't think you should read this as like, video games have so greatly surpassed other medium. I think it's like Marvel was a fucking steal. But
well, that's one of those things, isn't it? Where it's like they were able to buy low, obviously, right, because of like the circumstances of the ownership of the Marvel properties at that time, but also just because it's like they're looking at it and thinking, you got all this stuff here, and they're not able to monetize it the way we will be able to.
Right.
So, that's where you could pay a nice price to the owners at that time who were more than willing to take it, versus the sort of uncertain kind of, future that they would face under their stewardship. But in the hands of one of these, mega corporate entities, they can really put it to work and make it generate revenue in ways that the previous owners could only dream of. And all of a sudden that amount that they got is piffling. It's really kind of, nowhere near,
right,
kind of capturing the full value that it is to, the new owners. But that's the point, isn't it? Is that, they can do things that, is worth more to them because that what they can do with it versus what the previous owners could do with it. I guess the question with the Activision thing would be, is it one of those here with Microsoft? Can they make Activision Blizzard kind of work for them in a way that they couldn't by themselves, or is it simply about kind of adding to the prestige and of all the kind of video game entities that they've assembled under their banner over the 20 years of being in the business. And again, just kind of I guess the standing that it gives them of this whole thing of like, oh look, we're reforming corporate culture and we're making the video game market more competitive, even when the truth of those things is less obvious.
I fully believe that Microsoft can finally unlock Call of Duty's true sales potential on Nintendo consoles.
I mean,
it's been lying fallow for so long, I mean, I don't know. It does seem like a bit of a stretch, but I mean, maybe we'd be surprised.
So here's a good example. So Microsoft and Activision and Blizzard have both taken their core brands and attempted to monetize as mobile products in China, with varying degrees of success. Microsoft has assets, and they have resources, and they have the cash to deliver that into full success. Like, that could be an opportunity for them. Look, even since the Activision Blizzard merger, it doesn't feel like they've operated as one company. It feels like they've operated as two companies, in a bifurcated way with different cultures and different contributions to the final product. Microsoft is an old hand at uniting multiple companies that they have acquired and getting them to work together inside the Microsoft
they've been through this enough at this point.
Like, they could just make the machinery run better than it currently. And look, we know the machinery's not been running well. That's how we got here.
I mean, the thing is, though, they're still profitable. They're a profitable company.
They are.
Right?
Yeah,
they're still making $5 billion a year profit.
They could be more profitable.
Right. I think it would do a couple things. I think it would extend the reach of Activision Blizzard, right? Maybe get their games into hands that they wouldn't normally be in.
It might get them to diversify their offerings too. Like they in the service of only having a very limited things that generated revenue for them. Their World of Warcraft, maybe some iterative sales on what's going on with like older back catalog stuff for Blizzard. And then for Activision, they had really narrowed their offerings down pretty far.
Yeah.
Over the years. That, like, if any of those games, if a Call of Duty game didn't sell one year, like it was just like, this is the bad Call of Duty year, it was a major blow to their books.
Yeah. Even as big as they are, they're still not immune to that.
But Microsoft bringing them in as a subcomponent of a subcomponent of Microsoft, they don't have to be so beholden to, we must release the tentpole every year or we are fucked.
Yeah, that's true. You could diversify and actually take some risks, maybe, because again, when everything's underwritten by Microsoft, that gives you flexibility. That them sort of having to be on we talked about this with the whole question about the appropriateness of a Call of Duty game coming out when the Russian invasion is progressing. It's like, well, they as a corporate entity, they don't really have any choice, because that money's got, spice must flow, like it's the revenue that comes from a Call of Duty annual release has to come in, and it has to come in big. Whereas, if you were at Microsoft, like, you could actually, maybe think about doing some things, but having some flexibility that you didn't have before, as long as it could potentially pay off with bigger returns in the future. Obviously, it's not just going to be for the hell of it or anything like that. But no, I guess in terms of the games industry, though, as its scale compared to other media, like there is still something, I feel like, of just like probably, like, sometimes you get like how big a launch is for a particular thing, or just how much money the industry made in a year, and the tone of the reporting, when it's like the audience that it's written for is like a general audience, can be like, did you know these things make this much money? Like,
it's funny.
There is still some of that in like mainstream media, even though like we are so many years into the life of the games industry. It shouldn't really be that much of a shock to anyone anymore. But, I guess especially because there are essentially like multiple games industries now. When you talk about Genshin, like the free to play, the mobile part of the industry, the console part of the industry, the PC part of the industry. Like, it's just, that like, there's so much to it. You really shouldn't be shocked at the scale of it now. But because of like the more, I guess like star power associated with sports and, movies and stuff, as the email suggested. Like, there's still this kind of like, oh, those things that like are like, they seem anonymous compared to, whatever you want to say, fucking Avatar, I don't know. And, but, it's, wow, they bring in so much money. But I kind of feel like we're due at some point that kind of perspective, like getting phased out, but clearly we're not there yet.
People die. I say that, but it's kind of a joke, but kind of not. People die. And like people who are now the voice leaders in these conversations grew up in video games and are intrinsically aware of their value. Now we say that Avatar's already hit 1.5 billion. It's only been out for a few weeks. So Avatar 2, and like it, whatever. There's still stuff there.
It's just sort of irony to that, like, being distinguished from video games, isn't it? Because it's like, well, like, a lot of the stars in that are, like, behind CG motion capture,
right.
As if it was a video game.
And I got to listen to the fucking creator talk about him at an Ubisoft press conference to bring it full circle. So,
oh, yeah.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap it up there. Emails, rfn at nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn at nintendoworldreport.com. Greg, we have music for this episode.
We do, yes.
It's from me this time, which we just sort of on the fly decided that we would, that I would go ahead and do it. So, I was talking about this after we went to break, where, Needy Streamer Overload has a very, sort of appropriate soundtrack that's sort of kinetic and high energy, sometimes menacing. Sometimes it slides into dark. But when things are going okay, even then it's frenetic and just like bubbling, tumultuous energy. But also kind of rendered, like I said, going for that specific like PC-88 era of chiptune music. So the song here is called, Angel Falling. This is basically the music that plays when you're getting ready to stream, when our kawaii angel is getting ready to stream and things haven't gone sideways. Like, things are going okay. And even then it's still frenetic and a little discomforting and a little abrasive, but it's also fun at the same time. Like, it's peppy and got a lot of energy behind it. Like, it feels like this is supposed to be a fun song, but it's almost exhausting at how much it's trying to be fun, which feels like a really appropriate analogy for what the game is about as well. So, it kind of hopefully sort of cement what I was saying about the game. So, on that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.